What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 241 of Littleroot Lessons. I'm your host, Ro, and this week we had a bit of an interesting switch up with the hosts. As most of you know, Carter is currently in Louisville himself. He went 4-4 at the tournament, which was very good, playing all 8 rounds. And you will hear a lot more about his time at the tournament next week. And Jay also had some personal things, and so I'm very happy to have one of my best friends playing this game on, Chris. Also, who is what is it, CJL numbers in the Discord? Chris Larkin.
Yeah,
You
I think
know,
it's CJL78, which I
yeah.
think was just the generic email that they gave me at Pitt. And I was like, sure, yeah, no, that'll be good.
I always wondered what the 78 was because I know it's your
I feel
initials.
like, yeah, I feel like it probably makes people think I'm just like some old person just hanging out it's like probably should change that. Well, I guess Discord now, it just lets you show up as Chris, which is a positive. Before
Yeah,
you had to like actually have the username, but yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, well, we have Dad. Dad's old. Not that
Yeah,
old,
that
but
was not
Dad's
born
old.
in 1978.
No, he was not. He was born in
No,
how old? Oh my god, how old is Dad? Sometime in the late '80s. Anyway,
yeah, I was gonna say.
yeah. Anyways, this week we are covering a very fun tournament, a very good tournament for the two of us specifically, even though we weren't there. Louisville Regionals, a Midwest tournament in a real city, sort of.
Woo!
More real than Peoria, which I still think doesn't exist.
Yeah, you hear even the Midwest people are like, "Oh yeah, no, that's not a real place." It's like I've heard I'm a relatively new player, but I've heard the tales of people going to like Lancaster, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
for a regional. And as someone who lives in southeastern Pennsylvania, I cannot imagine being like, "Yep, let's put a bunch of people in Lancaster where there's not an airport, no way to get there. Don't worry about it."
Yep. What was it? My cousin got married in Lancaster, and yeah, that there was nothing that happened. I got smashed at that wedding, but that's a story for like whatever LRL after dark. Boy, oh boy. Speaking of like old regionals, like in areas, the last time they did a regional in Massachusetts was at Patriot Place, which is kind of crazy, but like other place before. So they did one in Sturbridge, which is not near any airport. It's like the what Sturbridge is mostly known for is they have a like a kind of like a year-round Ren Fair-esque but like colonial village that you send elementary school kids to on field trips, and they decided to have a regional there. So
So they
we have
replaced one type of nerd with a different type of nerd, is what you're saying.
kind of, yeah.
Okay.
But but yeah, so in a real city with a real airport. And this is another really great tournament. Going through usage, I feel like we're having a lot of things settle down. Outside, like Sneasler being the number one Pokemon, I'd say would be the biggest surprise. But if you've been following the metagame for the past month, playing on ladder, at this point, it feels like it's a Pokemon that you're going to see regardless. And to see it in the number one spot was over Goldango and Rillaboom was a little surprising, but at the same time, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think Sneasler, like, I think people like to talk about the Dire Claw stuff a lot, and totally makes sense, right? Dire Claw is an out that you just have in your back pocket that I don't really know that any Pokemon has ever had an out like that just sitting there. You know what I mean? But even if you take that away, like, even if it was just Poison Touch, Poison Jab, or like Acro, or like Focus Sash Acro, or whatever, it's like fighting types are so good right now. Fast fighting types are so good right now. And then having a fighting type that can also just anecdotally hit fairy types, right? With Dire Claw, it's like I think it really found its perfect partner with Dragapult. I'm sure we'll talk about those two as like a duo at
Yeah.
some point, but it's crazy to like see it at number one, but it makes total sense just with the ability to click close combat uh, and Dire Claw.
Yeah. And with you bringing up Dragapult, we should look at the bottom part of this list where four of the bottom five mons in the top 12 are usage stats are all dragon types. You'll Fluttermane goes to get milk for a season, and we get Oops All Dragons, the metagame again. Garchomp in 8th, Arch in 9, Dragapult in 10, and then Dragonite in 12th. And spoiler alert with Garchomp, this Mon has won 3 of the last 4 regionals and has been in the
Oh wow.
finals every single region. Every single regional in this metagame, the finals have had Garchomp in it, if not multiple Garchomps. It's won the last 3. People are complaining, and I think the complaint with Sneasler is that not only do you have that out in Dire Claw and to a lesser extent Poison Touch, but it's the fact that it takes you have no control, and your
Yeah.
opponent doesn't either. So it's not something you can plan for. Like when people
There's one way to mitigate it, and it is
Covert
Vital
Cloak.
Spirit Follow Me, or Cloak. Yeah, you're right, Covert Cloak, but Vital Spirit Follow Me, which does not feel very consistent. Doesn't feel like something you're necessarily going to splash on every team.
Well,
Um,
it's splashed enough, but
yeah. But no, I mean the dragons are crazy, right? Like you watch this or you look at this list and you feel like you're watching like a false swipe gaming video about Gen 5.
well,
It's like,
so
oh, you could drop a dragon gem boosted Draco and there were no steel types didn't really resist it. They only kind of resisted it. And you're like, what? Shut up, grandpa, let's get you home. And now we don't have any fairy types. And you're like, oh man, this is insane. This is ridiculous that you could just click outrage and it's just like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. That's a real thing you can do.
yeah, Shawnish went, and I think it was last week. They texted me and they said, "Are we playing Gen 5? Is that why all the old heads are doing well right now because they feel like they're at home?" And I'm
Right.
like, I don't know. I'll go text Trailer and see like if he feels comfortable going and playing Gen 5, if this is like Gen 5. But yeah, like this is like Double Dragon's huge. Like you do have these great steel types, two specifically
Yeah.
in Goldango, King Gambit, and like Arch is the dragon who's also the steel type, which is really really cool for it. And while these steel types are very insane, it's like Garchomp wants to see your steel type
Yeah.
because Garchomp is also a ground type, and I think that's one of the things where we complain about Sneasler because there's so much out of control. But if you had to ask me what the best Pokemon in the format is, I got to go with the one that just keeps on winning in Garchomp. And
Yeah.
eighth in
When we
usage,
sorry, I was just gonna say we talked like people earlier when like the raid got announced and we weren't playing anything. People were talking about like Corviknight and Bronzong as like, oh man, these have to be your Blood Moon answers. Like this is what you need. And it's like we were kind of right, not like super high usage, but it's like yeah, you want something that is immune to ground moves and provides a good resistance, but you want it because Garchomp is the thing that you're trying to wall out. It's just there's so many steel mons, there's so many things that want to Terra Steel or Terra Fire or Terra Poison to avoid Dire Claw. And, I mean, we were texting about this earlier. It's like Garchomp being this good in a meta where Rillaboom is like top 2 usage at every regional is insane. And all
yeah,
these Garchomps are still running Earthquake. They just don't care. It's like it forces them to run Tantrum too. You know what I mean? Like you have to have that. That's not going to be reduced, or you have to have the single coverage. But they don't care. They'll click Stomping Tantrum into Primarina with Life Orb. You're probably still doing half damage, pretty
50ish
close to
percent,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and then if guess what, you have a defensive Terra Steel, Terra Fire, um, or you can take
Honestly,
that
the
Moon
offensive
Blast.
the offensive Terra Ground as well, it has
Yeah,
fallen off a little, but that is what a lot of these started off with. Honestly, being forced to run Stomping Tantrum, in my opinion, has actually made the Pokemon even more consistent because
yeah,
previously you go back to Regulation C, people were running Rock Slide on it, and that move, it just is an inconsistent move. It can miss.
yeah,
It's an unbelievable move, but it's not something that you're not getting stab on it. You can miss. It's non-stab spread damage that can miss. And yes, you do have the flinch factor, but in the grand scheme of things, you're not like if the flinch isn't coming through, you would much rather see your opponent's Garchomp click Rock Slide than any of its stab moves. And now it's like it's running dragon coverage, it's running accurate ground coverage, and it's just playing into the consistency of the fact that it has these really really powerful moves that will hit all the time.
yeah. I think the most surprising thing to me about Chomp is that they're all Life Orb.
Hmm.
I mean, it makes sense. We can talk about like the math of it, but it's like in my head, it's like, oh, they're all going to be clear amulet. They were mostly clear amulet at the start, but then it's like, okay, well, if you get intimidate, it like sure you keep yourself from getting intimidated, but in the best case scenario where you don't get intimidate, it's a 1.3 times boost. In a case where you do get intimidated, sure, you go down a stage minus 1.5, but then you go back up by like 1.3 from the life orb. I know it's not like exactly how the math works out, but it's like I remember when we were prepping for NAIC in 2023, we talked about this. We were like,
Yeah.
listen, clear amulet's great, but you can't be so afraid that like you're not willing to take the upside. You know what I mean?
And I think that people are realizing that what I was just doing on screen. So Tauros, you didn't see any. I think water Tauros was 1%. Incin is seventh in usage, but seventh in usage for Incin is only 25%.
Yeah.
And then there was only a single Gyarados, which I find a little weird, seeing that there was that Gyarados balance team that did have a decent finish in Lima last weekend. So that was like a bit of a surprise for me. I thought that
Yeah.
maybe so. Well, I was thinking like maybe the Americans, they like cooking. Like for all we know, next week in Lille, Gyarados balance is like the thing specifically to both intimidate and be immune to Garchomp. But like that's part of it's understanding the metagame where why am I'm not going to be that afraid of intimidate because if I'm only facing Incin a quarter of the time, I can just like in those instant matchups, I can just play around it. You can have other ways to handle the Incineroar on your team, and once you stop its ability to pivot in and out, then the Garchomp just takes it out anyways. So it's not as like if Incin was like 40-50% usage, you have to run Clear Amulet because you're going to be
Yeah.
dealing with that 50% of the time. But in terms of like in this current meta, you can get away with the life orb, and we're seeing that right now. About almost 65% of the players who brought Garchomp were life orb, only 36 clear amulet, and then you're throwing in some choice items, loaded dice scale shot, which is just crazy,
Yeah.
earth plate because you're just I don't know leaning into being like ground damage. I can't say. And bright powder belongs on the sand teams.
And not to get too sidetracked on it, but I mean, there's other dragons that aren't respecting Incineroar either. You know,
Yeah, no, it's
Dragapult, Dragapult doesn't care, and the main disrespect you clicked right on it is Dragonite. I can't believe that these AV Dragonites are running multi-scale over inner focus.
yeah
And
multi-scale.
I don't even necessarily think they're wrong. Like multi-scale is an insane ability. I brought it a lot in early Scarlet and Violet, even when other people were running um like the inner focus ability, just because I really respected like the damage and how you could, sorry, not the damage, but the damage that you could take. But it's like these Dragonites don't care. They're just gonna like they're gonna go and they're gonna disrespect your Incin and they're gonna click Terrifying Terror Blast and that's it.
Well, that was even just the big thing with when you talk about the damage with or at least the damage mitigation. In it was Zay versus. Give me a second. James Beck. There we go. Zay versus James Beck. The round 11 winning in. Shout out New England for winning that. Zay, love you, buddy. Um, all the I think all of game one they were talking about all the casters was like, yeah, there's some potential damage on the board, but multi-scale's still active, and Zay's Dragonite just doesn't care. It's like
Yeah,
you can punch it, it's going to hit your back really hard because it's not going down, and it's like that ability in itself just is absolutely incredible. One thing to note here: you saw 27 choice band and 27 loaded dice. The loaded dice set with scale shot is very popular right now in the best of one
that's
ladder in
crazy.
Japan. And so I expect that actually, I wouldn't be shocked if loaded dice pops a little more. Something that I've thought of trying to run on the team. Mostly because, again, you get that great dragon type coverage. You get to do a lot of damage. Yes, it can miss, which means it's not the most efficient
I
move
have
in that
missed
sense.
as a Baxcalibur enjoyer, I have missed a lot of scale shots when they would have won me the game. Um,
Yeah, but like
so
if you love your Pokemon more than Chris does, they'll hit for you
that's
easy.
true. Yeah.
And one of
I
the
just
other,
didn't realize it was that prevalent. Like seeing it up there more than Assault Vest is like crazy to me.
yeah,
Like
no,
I can't. That's insane.
this is something that's going to be very on the rise as the Japanese meta sort of settles and we start to see a little more of that creep into the states. I know one of the teams that was popping up on top ladder that we did not really see have success in Louisville, and again, it might just be because it's still a little too new. It was based on a Japanese player whose name is skipping my mind. He's the same player who built the Miraidon team that ended up winning Worlds this year. That variant of Miraidon. He finished 18th on the ladder, the in-game ladder in September, using a team based around Assault Vest Ursaluna, Loaded Dice, Dragonite, Screens from Grim, support Volcarona, Gambit, and no, not Gambit. Goldango and Annihilate. There we go. So like that six was a thing that apparently was popping up a lot in the high ladder, which means that is a top team that's moved a little bit from the East over to Western players, and maybe again in Lil or LAIC, that might be a team that we might see pop up, and that could be like a team that makes the Loaded Dice Dragonite do even more. Moving on to our day two usage, we had a top cut of 109 players. The two big things that popped out to me in terms of usage, the drop in Rillaboom and the drop in Primarina. And
Yeah.
further, I believe only a single Prim made top cut. We're talking about all these dragon types, and you see and part of it is because there's no fairies. Primarina is the fairy. I know I brought this up in our builders Discord, and I mean you can just say like what you thought of it on why Prim is struggling even in a dragon meta.
Yeah, I think it just takes a ton from all the dragons. I mean, it's like it wants to defensively Terra out of a lot of matchups. All the dragons are with Sneasler, right? Or at least a ton of them are. So it wants to go to that Terra Steel or that Terra Poison. It's like, okay, cool. You do that, and then you get hit by Garchomp when it comes out on the field next turn. Or even like as a Dragapult balance enjoyer myself, if I clip Phantom Force into your Primarina, like, and you let me get it because you think I'm targeting the Incin on the other side that you switched in or whatever, like, you're going down. Like, most of the time you're going down, and if I helping hand, you're definitely going down. So it's just like, that's a neutral attack. It's like, I have been someone who, since the beginning of this format, like, I really respect Prim, but I have had zero success using it. I just feel like every time I bring it, it dies to all these physical attacks, and then all the special attacks it's supposed to wall. You just take enough, and you don't have recovery unless you have Citrus Berry. And then if you have Citrus Berry, you're super weak to Spore or other stuff. Um, so it it does not surprise me. It also wouldn't surprise me if we see Prim come back next week on that European Dragapult balance and recapture its place and all those kinds of things. But it's not super physically bulky. There's a lot of strong physical attackers in this meta. It's not insane to me that it would drop off like this. And
Yeah.
you were the one calling Rillaboom a merchant.
Yeah, Rillaboom is a day one merchant. It's been a trend throughout the entire format and it does very well. It's on a lot of really strong teams, but even like we can go here. Actually this tournament is its best tournament so far with fifth through seventh in cut, and then the
It did
next
the opposite of whatever the last NA regional was. Last NA
yeah,
regional, it super converted from day one to day two, but then it didn't convert from day two to top cut.
and it
This
had a better
tournament,
conversion to cut this time.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, it honestly might just be noise. Um, I think Rillaboom is in a tough spot when you're asking it to run high horsepower for coverage. Like I
Yeah,
think it probably needs to, but when I was watching stream earlier the rounds versus, which I'm sure we'll get into, the insane Executor team, and I was like,
yes.
why is this person not clicking U-turn? Like, just you turn out, get the terrain control. Like, what are you doing? And then I saw him click high horsepower into Torkoal, and I was like, I forgot every Rillaboom runs high horsepower now. And it's like,
Yeah,
if you're one of these fake out mons, you want a pivot move. I think you always want one. And I understand why Rilla has to forego it right now, because otherwise you're losing to all the dragons, you're losing to Golden Go, you're losing to Incin, which you already lose to anyway, but you're losing to
yep.
all the fire types, all the Terra Steels, all the Terra Poisons. Like, I get it. But it's like Rillaboom without U-turn feels like such a worse mon. It feels like you are just bringing it so you can click grassy glide in matchups where they don't have terrain control, or it feels like you're bringing it so that you don't lose to Indeedee size spam. And it's like, yeah, that's a really important slot. Like, there's not a ton of grass type competition right now. It's just like it and
It's
Amoonguss and then
yeah.
like some niche picks. But like,
You're not,
and we've talked in the
Wims,
past,
who is barely a grass type.
Wims is not a grass type. It's a spore immunity, but it's not a grass type.
Yeah,
Uh,
your next real grass type is Jesus, Sinistra.
yeah,
Yeah, Sinistra, who had the
it's
same
like your
exact
next real
usage
grass
as
type is
Yon Mega.
whatever. Your next real grass type is whatever is running Terra Grass. It's like
Yeah,
whether that's your Glamora or your um, whatever, your Archaludon, depending on the set. But yeah, it's just like, I think there are some interesting grass types, which is probably getting too far up road about other stuff. But I mean, yeah, I think Rilla will always be day one high usage, and I think it's just going to depend on the tour whether that converts or not. And like we said, it can convert one of two ways, and I don't know which one's better. Like, I don't know whether you'd rather say like, oh, it gets to day two and then it kind of flops in day two, or whether you're like, hey, it might not convert to day two, but the people who brought it and who played it well, they got to top 8, top 16. So I
yeah.
don't know which one would be a sign of something better, but I don't know. What I would say is, do not disrespect Rillaboom, right? Do not like build
Oh
a
yeah. When
team
I'm
and
when
just
I'm,
like,
if you build a team that loses to Rillaboom, you built a bad team. And
yeah,
me calling
exactly.
it a day one merchant isn't me saying it's a bad Pokemon. Like, yeah, this
Yeah,
is we kept it in our S tier for a reason in
yeah,
last week's tier listing episode. Like, and if you look at our tier list, you have Goldangos 2, King Gambit, which we put S tier 3, Incin, which we put there, right there, like Amoonguss. Like, for day two usage, all six of our top six, the six models we put in S tier, finished in ninth. We finished like top 9 in usage. The only one we didn't put was Sneasler, and after this weekend, do I think maybe it could be there? Sure, maybe. But that was last week's episode, and we aren't doing a tier list again probably
I'm not
for a
responsible
decent
for what I
bit.
said last week.
Yeah, no. You think no? I'm going to have to be responsible for one thing I said last week. One of the other cool things that I did notice as well is the continued rise in Alolan Ninetales, which Carter didn't want to put in A tier, and I said yes. And Carter, going to do this while you can't respond on pod, like you would do to me, because I love you, buddy. Carter got clapped by a snow team in round 8, and yeah, so do with that what you will, Carter. You spoke bad about Ninetales.
It's so funny that Ninetales is here, not as like an Aurora setter, not even as like the Encore disable that we've seen in the past. Like, it's still doing those things, right? But
Yeah,
like most of the time, people are just like, this is an ice type. This is an offensive ice type that secondarily will give me some weather control against sun or rain teams. Um, so to me, that's super interesting. Like, if you had said Ninetales has a really cool place in this meta, I'd be like, oh, sick. Like, we're Aurora Veil, we're setting up, we're doing like these balancy things. And it's like,
and
yeah,
it's
we're
like
doing
no,
these balancy things. We're breaking balance with it
yeah,
so that our balance pieces can beat their balance pieces. Like, I'm
everyone,
clicking choice specs Blizzard.
yeah, because everyone else is running Double Dragon, and
Yeah.
every team pretty much does have it. Like Rillaboom or Amoonguss is on every team, so yeah, I'm clicking my funny button, and 20% chance or whatever, 10% chance. Your Pokemon gets frozen, and it goes from a funny button into the most goddamn hilarious button you could possibly click.
And freeze dry, we saw it in Zay's match. Like, freeze
Yeah,
dry is like legitimate. Obviously, on a spec set, you're getting locked into it, but it's like, it was the thing that, besides the speed control, made Iron Bundle so difficult to deal with. because so many times you're like, what am I going to use to beat this ice type? I'm going to use a water type or a Terra Water. And that's like, oh man, I really don't want to play the guessing game of whether this Iron Bundle Hydro pumps into me or freeze dries me, because freeze dry is a really powerful move that, by the way, can also freeze you just like Blizzard can. Not don't have the same math on that because you're only hitting one target, but it only takes one freeze and then you can be
Yeah.
locked in there forever. So um, it's a fairy type that's not even playing like a fairy type. Outside of the defense, like it's, I would say there are other mons that I'm more interested in their big weekends. Like I'm really interested in Porygon 2, just because I know that had a big jump and we can talk
Yeah.
about that. But in terms of like a mon succeeding in a way that you wouldn't have really thought it was going to succeed, I would say Ninetales. And also Snowbuff, what the best change they've made in a long
I
time.
yeah, I mean like as an ice type enjoyer, I do wish they kind of also kept the chip damage to just keep it whole, match it with exactly what sand does. And
I
there's
think it would be
sometimes
worse. I think you
there's
want to play it. I think you want to play it with like random sash mods. Like I guess I
but
shouldn't say it would be worse. It would just be different. Like think about
it
how
would be
many times
different.
on sand teams like can't run a Sneasler because they're like, oh, I can't run Focus Sash on this thing.
I mean,
Like
I
it's
could
gonna go
see that.
down and then I'm gonna die to sand. So
And
I don't
but
know.
maybe I'm also thinking of it like if you can play it like the Ninetales in this more hyper offensive way, punishing other mons with like
For
other
sure.
sashes and knowing I can bring you down to sash and handle you once the turn ends. Even just getting like a couple residual turns, like protecting your mom for a turn, keeping it safe, getting some chip on your opponent, and then making that KO the next turn or pushing it. So I but
And
like
there
the
was
thing,
nothing, sorry, there was nothing worse than in the Sword and Shield era being like, ha, my Pokemon survived, and then getting hit by like Max Hailstorm or Max Rockfall and being like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go down to
yep,
chip here. Like
yeah,
this is my brain as someone who started playing in Sword and Shield during the pandemic, my brain is already so Dynamax coded. I definitely prefer a meta without it, but my brain is very Dynamax coded that it's just like, oh, I just have like the flashbacks to that.
yeah. My brain's so Dynamax coded, I can only build in restricted formats because the only idea of team building I have is make my good Pokemon do its thing really, really great.
Yeah.
Um,
The world's two wor- the two best bad Dialga players are the two
yeah,
worst good Dialga players. I don't know which one you would prefer to ascribe to us, but I built the world's worst Assault Vest Dialga team in the single restricted format where I was one win away, two chances at it, one win away from getting go to the top that top cut of Players Cup.
yeah, and you
And
qualify for Players Cup twice with it. And my
yeah,
my Dialga did a line of happy white some snow, and I ran 4 attack life orb and just proceeded to top
I can't
32,
believe
one
we're
of the toughest regions.
I
yeah,
can't
we
believe that we got a Dialga like buff this gen, and it will just never be playable. It just
I
like
play
won't matter because they
I
didn't give
pl-
it the right buff, and it's not the
nope.
right Pokemon if you can't Dynam. If you can Dynamax, it's incredible. It's like, yeah, man, clicking Max Steel Spike like that. Well, once again, forever ingrained in my brain, being able
Yes.
to click Max Steel Spike and just never dying. But I just know I don't know that we'll ever get its time. I could see Palkia because they made it faster. I could see someone making some weird HO Palkia thing at some point, double restricted, but I sadly think we're going to be waiting until Gen 17 when we're 50 years old. And we're going to be like, they finally gave Dialga the buff it needed.
I'll be in a wheelchair by then. My back's so screwed up. No, I will say I did play. It was a rental team. It was a Dialga Origin team. It was
Yeah.
fun. I went like 2-2 at a local. Um, I went up like
Hey, that's
I
New
was.
England. That counts.
Yeah, it does. I went up against a what was it? My 2 losses. I'm trying to think who were my 2 losses. Both of them were Lunala teams because I literally just didn't have enough damage to break through Shadow Shield with all the balance pieces
Yeah.
around it. And I will say one of my wins, and I it was against good friend John, my friend John, and he ran a team with like it was a Sun team with like 4 ground weaknesses, and I had banded Landorus for EQ spam, so
Yep.
I just kind of and like yeah, I spammed him throughout the entire game. It was kind of mean. Um, Shout out John, Cheese Boy, great guy. Okay, finally getting into these teams, and you mentioned well a few of the Pokemon we've already mentioned: Sneasler, Garchomp, P2. Andrew Zhang had it all. This is another iteration of this Incin, Amoonguss, Porygon 2, Goldango balance quartet that is very, very popular. And the last two spots are usually these flex spots. We've seen usually a faster mon in this role, sometimes being, of course, we see Sneasler, we've seen Flamigo, and in this role here, the Garchomp is also sometimes a Hisuian Ursaluna. So Andrew
Yeah.
going for a faster mode while still having the speed control option with Trick Room on the Porygon 2 to lean into like that P2, Incin, Amoonguss, Goldango, slower, balanced setup mode.
Yeah. I think Garchomp is the play better Mon version of this team, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
Hisuian Ursaluna is obviously so powerful. Like, when they gave it to us, we're like, oh, when we get this in VGC, it's going to be insane. It won't matter, like, what they buff or debuff. This thing's going to be ridiculous. Um, and we were right. But, like, Garchomp is like, okay, I can probably bring it to almost any matchup, right? Like, it's not relegated to Trick Room. It's not relegated to all these different things. So I think first thing I noticed, the Garchomp version being more successful doesn't surprise me. Like I said, a lot of our friends ran the Hisuian Ursaluna version, which I think is awesome. But
Mhm.
I think this is the I'm gonna play it if you want, and I can bring this in almost any scenario, which I think is really smart.
I think
Um,
one of the big things with Garchomp is the immediate damage. You need the extra turn to whether it's setting up Trick Room, getting the Ursaluna with the Flame Orb, the Gut set up perfectly. One of the things that people were running recently, as and we saw it in the winning team in Dortmund, is running Misty Terrain on Clefable, and we also saw Stefan Mott with Misty Terrain Klefki
yeah,
this week. You set that Misty Terrain up, and all of a sudden you can't get your Guts boost. It really nerfs the damage output. It still does a good bit of damage. However, it's not like all of you're doing your math based on guts calcs. You're not doing your non-guts calcs. Your math is completely off. The Garchomp, you know your math. We can go into it, um, and you can just start putting up damage immediately. Another thing to note with this Garchomp is that we were just talking so much about Life Orb.
yeah,
The Life Orb is on Goldango on this team, and we see the Clear Amulet on Garchomp. Life Orb is starting to turn into like the offensive assault vest in the form of yeah, you could probably
yeah.
throw Life Orb on 3 or 4 Pokemon on your team, but you only get one. And
Anthony
Andrew
ran
chose
Life Orb, right?
yes.
I think he did. Which
Yes, he
I
did.
like with setup Goldie. My heart is always with lefties, or in the Garg era, it was Covert Cloak. But no, I think it makes sense on Golden Go. It's such a high special attack stat. You're not getting the boost from a Terra Steel or from a Metal Coat or whatever. So I think it makes a lot of sense. It cuts down on your longevity, but I think there are worse things. Um,
Well, you do have the Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss to help with the
yep.
longevity, and one of the big calcs it does get is the I think after Nasty Plot, your Life Orb Shadow Ball should KO most other Golden Goes unless they Terra,
Yeah.
and so like even after Nasty Plot, the Shadow Ball isn't. I don't know. It's either it will never do it or it's just a roll, but the Life Orb makes it guaranteed, and honestly taking 10% chip into a mirror match that you're going to see at least a third of the time, and especially if you get like a little more if you get into the top tables, that's worth it.
Yeah. I think the thing that probably won, I mean, besides Andrew's incredible play, right, is I think the Terra types are awesome here. I think
Yeah.
your redirector being Terra Fairy is really smart. Um, Once again, bias as a Dragapult player, but if I see a Terra Fairy redirector, I know that at some point I'm going to click Dragon Darts and I'm going to get stuck on the field against a Terra Fairy, a Moongus, or Magmar or something, right? And
Yeah.
I'm just going to get stuck. Um, Sneasler, it's just a click Earthquake. I don't feel strongly one way about it or the other. Terra Ground P2, you can basically be grounder fighting to help you against Gambit because you don't want to get walled by Gambit. This one does better in the Golden Go. And I think the Amoonguss being fairy means you have a better chance against Gambit because most Gambits are double dark Swords Dance, right?
Yeah.
And so I was playing a team. I was playing Nails' team, the team that won the global challenge, and that team's good. But Amoonguss is really only your only King Gambit answer. Like in terms of making sure that you don't get sucker punched out of the game if they Terra Dark. Um, but this Terra Fairy, like get +6, and I'll probably still survive that kowtow, and you can't sucker punch. Um, so I do think it's one of those things where the Amoonguss being Terra Fairy allows the Porygon to be Terra Ground, which allows you and helps you in other matchups. And
Specifically
then
to the
what?
Sneasler for that mirror, because
Yeah,
now you can hit Sneasler super effectively, which is super great. One of the other cool things we mentioned it like a week ago, 2 years ago, with the Sneasler with coaching, is that with this download
yeah,
Porygon 2, once it terras, you can actually coach next to the P2, and if you calc it right, especially like if you already have a +1 attack from the download, you can click coaching next to the P2, get the +2 attack, and that makes Terra Blast a physical attack. So if you are up against one like an Assault Vestmon, you can go and get that physical damage, which is at that point your higher offensive stat. And you can keep boosting that way. So not only is a Sneasler great next to boosting the Garchomp and of course itself with coaching, but also boosting the P2 is just another really great tech. I'm not sure how much, if at all, it came up with Andrew uh, being able to do it, but like that is an option, and that in itself is really cool.
yeah. I also think the Golden Go being Terra Water's somewhat interesting. They're almost all Terra Dragon. I wonder if it's just like, hey, I don't want to like I want to be able to Terra and take neutral from Garchomp, and I'm not as afraid against Rillaboom. Like I mean, there's no such thing as a bad Terra Water, right?
No.
I mean, we've seen it. To me, Water and Fairy have kind of gone back and forth against being the preeminent defensive Terras. Um, Grass is good, but that's as much for like a Spore immunity as anything else.
Yeah.
So I don't, like I said, I don't think you can go wrong with Terra Water. It's just interesting to see this one be Water when we're so used to the dragon being the standard, especially in this regulation.
Yeah, and I think it probably also is due to the fact that we're seeing so many other dragons that are also offensively running dragon moves. Back when we were last seeing Garchomp, Garchomp was a dragon type defensively only, and even then it
Yeah,
didn't want to be a dragon because that was a Flutter main format. You were not seeing Dragon Claw on Garchomp. You weren't seeing Outrage, or very rarely seeing Outrage or Dragon Claw on Dragonite, and now those are very common moves that you're seeing on these Pokemon. So
you weren't seeing Terra Dragon, Dragapult. You were seeing Terra Ghost,
yeah,
right?
it was
Um,
yeah. So like the dragons that were there weren't really leaning on their dragon coverage, and now the dragons in this format are really like doubling, if not tripling down on being dragons, which is why I think for Goldango being Terra Water is probably better to just keep that neutrality against the type that is dominating the format.
no, and I was going to say this with Gyarados. No electric types, man.
No,
Closest thing
yep,
you got
no
is
electric types.
Archaludon. I thought we
Yeah,
might see some Palmon at some point, but even then, you got a Terra to hit you with the second electric type. So there's just no electric coverage to be heard of in this format besides Electro Shot. So you can't really punish a Terra Water outside of a Rillaboom because Amoonguss isn't running a grass type offensive move. This is not a restricted metagame. We're not running Grass Knot. So
yeah. Moving on to second place, talking about like different grass types, we see a jump bluff here. Joseph Ugarte, Joe UX9, running his tried and true, very patented a jetpack Torkoal jump bluff Sun team. This is pretty much like the non-restricted format staple of Joe's at this point. At least for Generation 9, he is the Sun guy. And this is like to an extent, this kind of just looks like the up to like the regulation H version of his 2023 NAIC team
yeah,
in
we just replaced
terms
Flutter Mane with
with Typhlosion.
which I love. I love Typhlosion. I don't love this team because there's a lot of variance, like just inherently, and I think we saw that with Joe a couple times where um, he came back and he had a great run. He's an incredible player, right? But we saw in his early stream match is that those Leaf Storms and Sleep Powders were not going his way. So I I really respect the team. I mean, you and I both love Fast Encore. It's such a great
Yeah,
way to pin Pokemon. It's like you want to protect, okay. You're either getting locked into that or you're switching out and you're giving me initiative when I have these insane damage dealers on my side. Um, so it's tough because Joe's a really good player. I think the team's interesting. I think it's well played. I just don't know how applicable it is for you and me to go be like, I'm going to go play Jump Left Sun. Like, there's so many hard 50-50s. It almost feels like Psy Spam, right? Where I feel like not every Sun team that we've seen or Weather team that we've seen has felt like it's 50-50s. And I feel like this team is 50-50s. And we kind of saw that in finals with some of the quick games. But
yeah.
no,
Like
that's just
we
my
yeah.
long-winded take on it.
Yeah, and I think like when you and I were talking about it yesterday, like Joe's such a good player that sometimes in his games it feels like the only thing holding him back is him using moves that don't hit all the time. Because like there's nothing stopping Overheat from either of his Pokemon here. Again, the Leaf Storms, the Sleep Powders, like these are important moves to hit when you need them to hit. And if they aren't connecting when you need that, you're going down. And that's been like
It's the
really
Joe
a
UX9 story,
yeah.
unfortunately.
And well, yeah,
Yeah.
going back, I mean, the guy made his name using Groudon, so maybe he's just a gambling addict. Uh,
It's just interesting because a lot of times on these teams, like if you watched, I forget which one of Wolf's videos it was, but you watch and he's like, "Yeah, I brought Tornadus, but I almost never clicked Bleakwind without clicking Rain Dance first." Like
yeah,
this
that
team has
was
no, yeah. And I'm
yeah,
not asking Joe to run Gravity. Like there's no mon on this team that has Gravity. Like I get it. I'm not saying he shouldn't run this team. Like it's just you have no way to mitigate like luck not going your way except for the law of large numbers where it's like, hey, if I do these things that are more than 50% enough times, like I'm going to
it
miss
works
some of
out.
them, but I'm going to, yeah, like, so it is funny to like sit here and almost like scold him and be like, dude, why are you playing these attacks that aren't 100% accurate when you and I both are such like data nerds? And
Yeah,
it's like, well, if you click them enough times, it'll work. It'll
yeah,
work. So
yeah.
it's like
No, it's like if you
it's
do it
weird.
enough, and that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like Joe getting far, very far in this tournament. He was able to click these moves enough where everything worked out in its way for him. And then the other side of it with this team, it is very lead heavy. We saw it during the finals, especially game two of the finals. Like Joe just led right, Andrew just led wrong, and like Andrew lost his he set up P2, lost his Incin. I mean sub-trick him with P2 and took about 70% damage as well. Lost his Incineroar, and he was staring down a +1 Kingambit in Trick Room, a Typhlosion that was slower than all of the other damage dealers on his team. Um, and so it's like the trick room actually helped. The trick room helped Joe more than it helped Andrew, and he was like, "Yep, I'm calling it." And he did turn two forfeit, which I haven't seen in the finals match, and it's crazy that the guy who had a turn two forfeit ended up winning the set. But like that's what this team is able to put out. But then we also see situations where Joe's just stuck with this Torkoal, and it already has an overheat or two off, and it's doing zero damage, and then you throw in the fact that it's either doing burning jealousy stuff, which isn't enough, or you're trying to just crit with overheat, and oops, you miss.
Yeah. And it's
So
like playing Typhlosion without the redirection is brave, as someone who's also played a lot of Typhlosion.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, that's like another instance of, like I said, Joe just being such a strong player and being willing to bet on himself and his abilities. So I think that, like I said, brave moves all around, but I think it just kind of
and
shows the caliber of player Joe is.
and it almost worked. This is Joe's best finish since NAIC 23, if my memory
I was gonna
serves
say,
correct.
felt like he was on a cold streak. Like he was
He
so
like
hot at the end of Sword and Shield and so hot at the beginning of Scarlet and Violet. And it's
the
like
24 season, like regulations D. I think like Reg D. I want to say at Pittsburgh he might have top eight, or like he was very
I
close to
think he
top
did.
eight.
I think he lost
Yeah.
to Riley in Top Cut, if I
Yes.
remember
No.
right.
Yep. I do remember that. Or it was, yeah, because I remember him and Evans had like a really good team, And then yeah, it's just he was day twoing. Of course, he went to Worlds,
Oh yeah, it's
but
like a cold slump for Joe is like a great year for the rest of us, right?
yeah, and I also think he came very close. I'm not sure if he finished with a travel award to Worlds last year, but he came very close. If he
Yeah.
didn't, and yeah, we're calling that a cold streak and second regional of this new meta, and he's in second. And I'm not sure what his next events are. If he's going to be in Lille, if he's going to um, our next events in the US, or if it's LAIC. But I think Joe again is firmly in the must watch list, whether he's on stream, following his run to see where he's going, because if he's back in his bag, he is a threat to win any single tournament he's at. Someone who is continuing an insane hot streak is Riley Factura, who as Joe's powers diminished last year, Riley's just went above and beyond, winning Pittsburgh, being a consistent top cut threat at, I feel, every single tournament from Regulation D through Regulation G of last year. And he's keeping it going with this third place finish using an updated version of the Pelipper Arch Rain teams.
Yeah. My take on this team is that I saw Basculegion KO Dragapult
Yeah,
with a
it does that.
resisted hit. So it's like, oh man, like that's like I think sometimes with Rain we get so into like how am I gonna start the Archaludon? How am I gonna like deal with the Pelipper like from clicking like Hurricane into my resists? And then you're like, oh man, this thing's crazy. Like I love to see a banded Basculegion, right? Like I know it's so powerful, but it's like, man, I can like get in a position where I can outplay that, like at some point. Against a Basculegion that has Protect, I don't know, man. Like I'm shocked to see Life Orb just because that and Wave Crash is so much residual damage. Like in that game, we were talking about Riley basically KO'd his own Basculegion between Wave Crashes
Yeah.
and Life Orb, but at that point it didn't matter. He'd taken 3 KOs. He was threatening an Aqua Jet on. I'm thinking of the match versus Colin Higher because he
Yep.
was threatening an Aqua Jet on the Collins Volcarona that kept clicking Quiver Dance, and it didn't matter. It was crazy. Um,
And one of the other
so I
things
mean,
is, oh, you go.
oh no, I was just gonna say. So this is pretty standard, but it was just a reminder of how powerful Basque Legion can be in the hands of a really good player who, like I said, Riley tends to make choices where he might be giving up some damage, right? Like he's not running Draco on his Archaludon, he's running Dragon Pulse. And he's not running Banded Basque Legion, he's running Life Orb. So I think Riley tends to give up some damage for the ability to get some control back in the game because he thinks, and rightfully so, hey, the more choices I have, the better chance I'm going to have to win because I'm such a good player.
Yeah, Riley is very much in the opposite of Joe, but like very firmly in the I
Yep.
will not click moves that aren't 100% because he just wants control. Like, yeah, Hurricane doesn't have 100% accuracy, but the Pelipper setting the rain itself, anyways. I'm pretty sure that, like, if Riley is clicking a non-rain boosted Hurricane, a lot went wrong that game, and he's
Yep.
probably just complete the game. He's throwing Hail Marys out there at that point.
Yeah.
One of the nice things with Basque Legion as well, with that speed, is as a late game sweeper, let's just say your opponent put all of their. It takes a lot of effort to take down an archaludon, especially if you don't have the right team to do it. You might you might like lose one of your mons. You might have a couple others like brought down to like 50-60% health. Well, now this Basque Legion's coming in. It's the fast thing on the field because of the rain. If you have Tailwind up, Riley can match it with his Pelipper's Tailwind. And this last respect's doing base 100, base 150 damage off of a massive attack stat and the life orb boost as well. Like that, the wave crash is one thing, and the wave crash demolishes everything, especially when you throw the Terra in. But without having to commit the Terra, the last respects as a late game sweep option is one of the deadliest things. This is another attack that once you get a couple boosts on it will take out resisted hits, like resisted mons, because of how high you're taking a high stat mon and giving it a high base power move along with the stab and everything.
And
So
this is an example of how Game Freak just controls stuff. And
Yeah.
by that, I mean, Wave Crash didn't exist until Legends Arceus existed. You know what I mean? And it's like all water types got Wave Crash. And now I know not all of them did, but water types finally have a good physical move to hit you with that's not liquidation. And electric types got Supercell Slam,
Yeah.
which does
LOL.
recoil and can miss. It literally will do recoil if you go into an immunity. It's like, man, not that I think Iron Hands needs anything else, right? Like
No.
I don't but still it's like, wow, that's something.
Yeah, I
So I
remember when
apologize for that tangent, but it's
no,
crazy, man.
you're right, because it's like like water types really needed a move like this, and you see the water types that got Wave Crash are the impact water types of this format, well, outside of Pelipper.
Yeah,
But like Basculegion, like I don't think Palafin is Palafin if it doesn't have Wave Crash. It's insanely good,
no.
but it's not like top offensive threat of two different metas good. So having that, it just makes it makes this team good, because if you didn't have the Wave Crash in the Basculegion and it was just like an Aqua Jet last respect spot, I don't think this rain comp is as powerful, because you don't have that multiplier boosted burst damage that can just come out immediately.
I
Um,
think that's the number one thing that new players have to learn besides like play other people's teams when you
yeah,
need to. But like the thing I didn't understand, and I have like this very flashbulb moment of watching like a Cybertron video, is like damage multipliers. Like he was explaining how in a restricted format, if your Pokemon gets snarled, it's a lot bigger because the number that you're dividing by is
is a
bigger.
lot
So it's
bigger.
much more impactful. And then like you see that in multipliers to Pokemon with Pokemon like Basculegion or in past regulations like Miraidon. It's like multipliers aren't everything in Pokemon, but they are. It's like it's why you want to run reliable stab move. It's why boosting abilities and boosting items are so much more powerful than you would think they would be. Um, so I don't know. Once again, another tangent, but
No, I think it's very
multipliers are
important.
everything.
Yeah, and the next team has also a lot of multipliers. Torkoal is the multiplier mon. Its ability to let it set up Sun to boost its damage is the thing that made it go from one of the worst Pokemon ever created into pretty much a very solid, consistent Pokemon in every single meta. Uh, Parker Simmons ran a Psy-Spam team inspired by Wolf Glick by using Executor. And when I saw this, I was like, "What am I?" Like, what, again, we're talking Gen 5. Yeah, Wolf Glick in Worlds
Where's the
20.
Embor?
No, that was 2011. That was the M board. This
Oh,
this was
okay.
the year after the M board. Yeah, Worlds 2012. Again, another Gen 5 event was when Wolf finished in the finals with Executor. So yeah, we're pretty much playing Gen 5 VGC at this point with just modern Pokemon that are just absolutely crazy. Um,
I know I talked about Joe's team being 50-50s. This is so much better or worse depending on your mileage. Like I really respect this team. Parker played it so well on stream, in the earlier stream matches specifically. But like man, when you see Indeedee Executor lead and you're like, oh, are they gonna switch in the door call? Are they gonna sleep powder me? Are they gonna click trick room? Are they gonna or do they lead the Indeedee in the execute, and then they're actually going to switch in the Torkoal to get the speed? It's like, what one are you going to do to me? How are you going to try to ruin my life? An Executor is the one mon that can do this. Like we talk about all the time about how you don't like you have to use good Pokemon, but if you're going to use something weird, it better do something that nothing else does,
yep.
and nothing else chlorophyll clicks expanding force like this, right? There's just not another mon in the game that does it. So it's like I said, I respect using weird mons when you use them for reasons that make sense, and nothing else was filling this niche in 100 tries. So I think this team is awesome.
Yeah, and one of the other things is the fact that one of the big issues with these Psy Spam teams, the reason why Golly is really good, why we went for Armarouge Hat is, and also on the other side of it, the reason why like Blood Moon Ursaluna teams kind of has struggled is because when you set Trick Room, you're on a timer. Like Trick Room teams can play. You can play a balanced Trick Room mode, but once you get into those 5 turns of Trick Room, you are go go go. You want to put out as much pressure as you can because your opponent is going to do everything in their power to not let you set a second Trick Room. So a lot of times those 5 turns are all you have. Having a turn where you have to make a swap to get your big damage dealer in isn't great. You want to have that immediate pressure, and Executor being an expanding force mon who can set Trick Room, who has the energy ball, which is great because this team doesn't really like seeing water types. The
Yeah.
Torkoal, the Ursaluna, your Force and Centauras. Good grass type damage is hard to come by in this format, especially special grass type damage. So Executor being able to fill that niche as well. And it's just, again, there are so many reasons to use it. One of the other cool mons with this team that I think is a phenomenal part of Psy Spam. One of the issues with Psy Spam that or like Sun Psy Spam that we've brought up in the past is that it's linear, that people have game plans into it, and that you can just get farmed or player diffed once you get higher into like once you get further into the tournament, unless you have an incredible amount of experience as well, or you have some trick up your sleeve. Well, the Zoroark is the trick up your sleeve because if you think they led Executor Indeedee or like Indeedee Gallade, something of the like, and you're trying to figure out, oh, who's trick rooming? Is there a wide guard? And all of a sudden, you're just eating a Stellar Terra Hyper Voice off of with specs as well. Yeah, you're it's not fun. You try to fake out. You see a Torkoal Executor lead. You fake out into the Executor to stop the Trick Room from going up, and all of a sudden the fake out doesn't happen, and you just eat a flamethrower and an eruption back to back. Not great. So like Zoroark is the again that 50 is it? Are you seeing what? Are you actually seeing what you're seeing, or is there a Zoroark? And okay, one of the actually like interesting things with the Historian Zoroark is that if you are going to use this Pokemon, is you want to make sure that all of your Pokemon are the same size. My good friend Stefan Mott used this Pokemon in Baltimore, and at a local that I believe he ended up winning with the team, he realized his Zoroark was transformed to a Kingambit, and then his Kingambit came onto the field, and I think it was like one of his 2 Pokemon was like an extra small mon, and so one Pokemon was considerable, like a blatant, like different size than the other. And I think, like, if you were able to notice just from games, like, okay, well, when the real Kingambit's on the field, the real Kingambit is, regular size, or hey, this Pokemon's always smaller than usual. That's the Zoroark. Like, make sure you again, an episode of Rants. Make sure that all your Pokemon are the same size if you use the spawn, because that's a little tell that we never even thought of until we were like rewatching the VODs and like, well, that's a tell.
And especially relevant with the Pokemon from Hisui, where
Yeah.
that's where you're more likely to get the bigger and the smallers and then bring them in. The funny thing, and I think the Zoroark makes sense on this team, you need a fast mode. We saw that with Jin's Charizard team as well. Like these Trick Room teams, especially in these lower power formats, you need a fast mode. But this might be the least well-disguised Zoroark of all time. There are 2 abilities that would immediately give you away, and there's an item in Clear Amulet, and then another item that on Switch In would give you away in the Flame Orb. So I do not doubt the team building prowess of someone who finished in the top 4. I think you can position it in a way, but it is very funny because this has the chance of just like depending on timing and what gets knocked out that you can bring in an Indeedee that's not setting up Psychic Terrain or a Torkoal that's not setting up Sun.
Yeah.
So more niche than anything else, but I do think that this has a chance to be the least well-disguised Zoroark of all time.
As long as it gets its KOs, doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, it's an awesome mod.
Yeah. 5th place,
Speaking
Marco
of awesome
Martinez.
Pokemon.
Yeah, so, Jesus.
I am the resident guy. Yes.
I'm going to talk about the Dragonite, and then I'll let you, like, stroke poetically about your baby boy. this is the scale shot that we're talking about. Scale shot, extreme speed, protect, low kick. You really want either low kick or another like ground type attack in order to make sure that steel types don't wall you on the scale shot Dragonites. You can also go and potentially run like just no protect, but I kind of don't suggest doing that. The Terra Fairy is also really good here as well as a way to stop other dragons. And then the rest of the team, in most cases, this is another example of the coaching Sneasler. What's super cool next to the Dragonite is you can coaching before the first scale shot. You can coaching this. You can coaching the D Knight. Scale shot will then go and give you a +1 to speed, and the boost you got from coaching will mitigate the defense drop from the scale shot. So scale shot with coaching turns into like a damaging D dance, which I think is super super neat. One of the other things to note is that this is another example of us seeing the high horsepower on Rillaboom over the pivot move, and you to an extent you're also seeing like there's no real setup on the well, you have the Cerule Edge here, but we're so used to seeing the King Gambit being a setup mon, and this is the Terra Flying Terra Blast AV variant, going all the way back to that like Regulation B King Gambit. And with all that said, talk to us about why you should use Cerule Edge.
Well, I think it's really this is a Sneasler team more than anything. And you touched on it. Like coaching is the setup on this team. Like you're not running Clear Amulet. I mean, obviously you have King Gambit, which is deters it within Intimidate. It deters Intimidate with Defiant. But I mean, like I said, it's just you're going to keep clicking coaching next to powerful mobs that want to have their attack raised. Um, but no, I was a really big Cerulege proponent in like the pre-Incineroar days. Like I thought it was really good in Reg C, and some of the earlier regulations. I sort of brought it to NAIC, and I think I kind of cracked it. The Mon was good, but I didn't get the right set. I didn't get the Terra Bug that everyone else eventually ended up at, to get into that. But I think I was surprised, in all honesty, to see it do so well in this regulation. I know Incineroar isn't the 50% usage we've seen in the past, but it's at 25 right now. But the thing is, like, hey man, I can click bulk up and coaching in the same turn, and it's like, okay, +2, +2. I have recovery. I have a defensive Terra and an immunity, like, and I have a move that can also get me recovery outside of it. So this team is very interesting. Like I said, as much as I love Cerulege, I would not have predicted Cerulege supremacy at the start of the regulation, but this is not the only time we've seen a bulk up Cerulege do well. We've seen it do well in Limitless Tours as well. And I think it really comes down to its synergy with coaching and just being like, hey, I know I'm going to lose to Incineroar. Let me bring a bunch of other stuff that can beat that Incineroar with the coaching support.
Yeah. So the next two teams are relatively similar, a lot of similar mons. Sixth place we have Colin Hire, another veteran player. Colin being top 4 in the 2014 Worlds, better known by some of you as the Battle Room. Colin went, and this is his variation of the Dragapult Sneasler Vital Spirit Mon, like Follow Me Mon redirection team. And just to go show as well, we also see Gary Dortona's also ran a Dragapult team. His is a little different, and we will cover that separately. But we could see at least in looking at the 6 bonds, their relative similarity. Colin ran the Bandy Dragapult Terra Dragon, which we've talked about. His Sneasler going for Fake Out as a dual Fake Out option with the Rillaboom as well. The dual Fake Out and the redirection is really great into letting the Volcarona with the Covert Cloak set up its quiver dances. And then this is a Terra Fairy variant with Heat Wave and Terra Blast. We usually also see the Volcarona potentially go for Terra Grass with Giga Drain as the coverage move. So going for Terra Fairy is yet again another tool that's specifically due to just this dragon type meta. And finally, we have the Dondozo with Solo Dozo with Yawn and Fissure as, again, like two is a balance break as well. You have a 30% chance to click fissure and just delete something. Yawn can just slow the pace of the game down with forcing your opponent to switch out of yawns or just take sleeps, which is super important. Between the yawn pressure and the poison touch and dire claw, a lot of and the flame body, a lot of status can come out of this team, and that can just really mess up your opponent's game.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing with the water type that you want to run with Dragapult, there's a lot of variance. We saw in EU last week, it was mostly Prim with I think one Dozo stuck in a cut. Here we see Dozo on Carrie's team that you just showed. We saw uh, Paldean and Tauros Aqua Breed. So I think most of these Dragapult teams want some type of water type, but I think there is some variance there in how you want to play it, and especially the Volcarona versions of the team where you have that special sweeper can get away with not playing the Prim. I think on teams where maybe you don't use Volk, you probably need the Prim, you need the special damage. But I mean, this Volk is so good, man. I did a couple practices with Volk, and I was struggling to find because I think you really want all three of the attacks you talked about. You want the fire attack, you want the grass attack, and then you want your Terra Blast of varying types, sometimes Terra Water, sometimes Terra Fairy. Um, and I will say, I think at some point someone will run a Covert Cloak set and say, because I'm Cloak, I don't need Protect, and just quiver through and rely on the redirection and everything else, just to get all that coverage to make sure that no matter what, like if I have Heat Wave, Giga Drain, and a Terra Blast, there's nothing that's going to wall me. And if I get two things, I'm going to do it, and I don't need the leftovers because I have Giga Drain. So I don't know. That's my takeaway, is that the Volcarona really enables you to be flexible with the water types, and I wonder if we will see someone go 3 attacks, Covert Cloak, Quiver Dance, set up Volk at some point.
I was going to say we did have the 3. Well, we had a 3 attack Protect Volk last weekend, not the 3 attack Quiver Dance though.
And you told me there was support Cloak Volk will not run Protect.
Yes, so
Sometimes.
the support. So we didn't see that as much this tournament. We did that was Dawei ran that in their top 4 team from Baltimore. That being usually Rage Powder, Struggle Bug, Overheat, and then like you could technically have Protect as the 4th move, but a lot of times you'll also see Will-O-Wisp.
Yeah.
While the Flame Body's there, it's not 100%. I'm just going to spam Willows. You could also see Tailwind in that spot as well, so the Protect might not be as useful. Carrie also used the Covert Cloak Volcarona, but this was a bit of a more standard Terra Dragon with the Giga Drain. This is a Rillaboom with U-Turn, which is nice. We also see that there is no Sneasler on this team. And yes, Special Pult is the big difference. We saw a couple special Pults.
I was going to say we saw a couple of them, yeah. I mean, it has. Singles players are not going to be surprised. They all run Special Pult. It's like, I don't know, as the occasional Pokemon enjoyer, you're just like watching and you're like, wait, they run this as a special Pokemon? And it's like, yeah, man, Draco Meteor's a lot better than Outrage. It's like, oh, okay. Shadow Ball's a lot better than Phantom Force. You're like, yeah, oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I get it.
In Dad's server, when we were doing the team, and I mean, like now we're seeing like the special Pult, but it was one of the players on my team. He was like, oh, I'm just going to run special Pult because what in this format switches into a Draco Meteor. And I'm like, oh, my sweet summer child. All the Terra Fairy-mons, Goldengo, King Gambit, like a lot of things, like switching, like a lot of things would love for you to just click Draco Meteor and then have to bounce.
Yeah.
And with that being said, with the fact that there is a lot of dragons, you are getting a lot, like than we expected early format, you are getting a lot more mileage out of the Draco Meteor than you were previously. But you see with the Terra Ghost, like this is the mon that wants to click Shadow Ball a lot. And that's where you're getting a lot of the damage out of. The other
I think Terra Ghost makes a ton of sense on the special sets too. Like your most spammable move isn't Draco Meteor, your most spammable move is Shadow Ball. Like on the physical sets, like you have to be so careful with Phantom Force because if you get caught out of position with it, it's done for you, right? You can't switch. You're stuck in the middle of it. Whereas with a set like this, I Terra Ghost, I lock into Shadow Ball. Like I get a hit, and then maybe I get a Spadef drop. You know, it's so it makes it to me. It makes a ton of sense that the special sets would be Terra Ghost over Terra Dragon, whereas like Terra Dragon, you want those multipliers, baby. Outrage is ridiculous when you Terra Dragon it. Like you're gonna kill
Dragon
P2,
Dart,
you're gonna
yeah.
kill Incineroar, you're gonna kill Amoonguss, even on neutral hits. Like it's
Dragon Darts makes everything a 2-hit KO multiple times over. But yeah,
yeah,
for this set, it's your single target. The getting that ghost multiplier is huge. I think one of the other interesting things is that we do see the Aqua Tauros as the Intimidator. A lot of these balanced teams aren't running Intimidators. Again, that was one of the things we noticed last week with in Lima, or yeah, it was last Lima was last week, but like yeah, they were running Gyarados because they wanted a water type and they also wanted an Intimidator. I really like Paldean Tauros. Early meta, like my favorite duo that I slapped on every single team was AV Rillaboom and Paldean Tauros. The issue it runs into is if you're not getting that Mirror Herb proc, you're you're missing pretty much every single damage roll. You aren't taking out Arch. You're missing like you're just if the King Gambit goes Terra Dark and it goes from from times 4 to times 2, you can miss that roll. Like there's so many things that you have to invest so much attack into, and even if you're like max attack adamant, you're still just missing out on the damage, and that makes it just like a like it's just so close, but not there. And having to be reliant on the mirror herb, like if you're not up against a King Gambit or an Annihilate, then it's like I don't have an item. And
it's crazy how
also,
min maxed this thing is, and it's
yeah,
still like it's like this thing has like 20 special attack or something ridiculous, and they're like it's base 495, but the way its stats are spread out, it's like listen, this is a base 540, 550 realistically in terms of the stats you're actually using. Like this thing might have more practical stats than some of the some of the like pseudo legends do,
yeah,
with the
when
fact
you
that they like than Gudra does. You know what I mean? With its 100 that it wastes an attack.
yeah, because like yeah, it's bulks are base 75, 105, base 70, base 100 speed, which is really good, base
Yeah,
110 attack, and then base 30 special attack. So like the special
especially
attack
yeah,
is non-existent, but and that's also the other thing. Your special defense is non-existent. A good neutral hit is going to take you out, because you also want to run speed. Like you want to keep up with the metagame. And the speed stats of these mons, and like if it was like a base one, it just needs like 5-10 more base stat points, and this would be everywhere. But the fact that let's pull it up. Incineroar has a higher base attack stat than at base. Like if it had Incineroar's base 116, completely different mon, and you're picking up those KOs, and you're just getting there. But right now, it's I really like them on. I think on this team it makes a lot of sense. And on this team, the damage is very balanced. You have 3 good physical attackers. You have 2 really good special attackers. It's just that outside of the burst damage from Draco Meteor, you really don't have the immediate damage output. You are going to be very reliant on setting up.
for sure.
Moving on to the team that everyone this weekend is going to be talking about, everyone's going to be copying, and yeah, Wolf Glick finally got out of his top cut, what would we call it, top cut slump, so to speak, between Worlds and Baltimore, doing insanely well in Swiss and then getting knocked out in the first round of cut. Winning, making top 8 and finishing as our 8th seed here, with again the P2 Incin. Again, a very standard balance core, going with the Sneasler, the slow mode with Ursaluna, and a very unorthodox fast mode. We'll start with the Archaludon here. We Power Herb plus either Stalwart or Sturdy is a very, I wouldn't say common, but it's at least a set that people know of. It's on the up and up.
Yeah,
Arch has been getting a lot more play without the pelipper, and people are just realizing, yeah, this is just a really good stat ball. Um, Power Herb, Electro Shot works the same way as people running Meteor Beam stuff with Glimora, Nihilego, and then you get Stalwart to just stop like completely ignore all of the follow me mons in this format. Terra Electric, Thunderbolt, especially after the +1 from Electroshot, you're doing a ton of damage, and Dragon Pulse is just unbelievable coverage to all the dragons. That's not the story of the week and the story of the team. So Yama was brought up on Twitter as like a bit from Fevzi, and he's like, I wanted to run this, and Wolf Glick apparently said, this but bigger.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't really get it. I will be honest, I missed the top cut match between him and Alberto, but the match versus Stefan Pengi, had, all this thing did was miss KOs and
Yeah.
not do anything. It was too afraid of Sinister to click Tailwind to give Wolf the speed advantage he needed to win. So I'm just like, I don't know. I don't really get it. Like the joke set, which I think Aaron played on his channel, was like, oh well, at least I'll click Hypnosis. Like, you know,
on the
hypnosis.
Yanma, yeah.
Yeah, on the Yanma version, where it's like, yeah, I get that. Like, you know, but I mean, like if this was tinted lens, I mean, I get it would be too slow. But if this was tinted lens, I could get it. Like, oh, you're just doing a ton of damage because you're tinted lens and nothing actually resists it. But I don't really get what this does on this team, that I wouldn't just rather have like a sixth better Pokemon. Like, I don't know.
It's so my thought is it's a damage dealing flying type that provides team with
And
special
what's the base power of Air Slash? And how accurate is it?
Air Slash,
isn't it 75-95 or something like that?
I believe, yes, 75-95 is Air
I mean,
Slash.
come on, man.
Coming off of, and like the special attack, it's base 116. It's not, we were just saying if Tauros had, if Tauros had a base 115, 116, it'd be insanely powerful. What's nice is that stab flying damage that doesn't require Terra Blast is always good, and it's super important. Yeah. The bug typing defensively, it's a giver, it's a hit or miss. I really don't care about it.
It's Sash. You know?
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah. The bug damage though really isn't doing much for me.
I mean, he lost because
what are you hitting with the bug buzz?
And it's like in all the stuff that bugs hit, do you know what mostly hits that too? You're mostly using bug coverage to hit grass types. And it's like, do you know what you already hit with grass types? Your Air Slash. Like, I don't know. And I am totally okay with the fact that there's just this one matchup that it solves, and I don't see it, and I don't get it. You know what I mean? I don't get it. And I know there are like no special flying types, like unless you want to play Pelipper, which seems like it would go pretty well with Archaludon.
I was going to say, honestly, yeah, you could Arch Pelipper would probably be pretty freaking good.
I think that's an archetype. I think people have been running P2 with Arch Pelipper. I think I saw that in some of the other stuff. I mean, in my head, P2 is always like basically like what our friends are in this weekend.
Yeah.
But I do know that's that. So I don't know. I know that there's not a lot of special flying types. I know that there's no special flying type moves that are 100% accurate unless you have Weather Up. So I get it. Like it's a unique thing, but like, I don't know, man. The Flamigo that was here that was clicking Brave Bird and couldn't be intimidated was pretty good. I know it wasn't a specials hacker, but like,
I also think it's like you're doubling down with the Sneasler, and this is definitely a Wolf thing of I'm going to use the strong Mon, and this is definitely something that where Wolf's going to do a video in like February.
It's going to blow our minds.
And he's going to explain Yanma. Or he built a team with Yotam, who also did insanely well with it. And Yotam's just going to say, oh yeah, this is why we did it. Because, you know, Yotam, like, he doesn't have to go and make a 2-hour epic on all of his events because it's not his job. Like, I mean, Wolf hasn't even done his...
Yotam's job is to drive to Philadelphia locals and, like, 4-0 me, which he did back to back. I forget. It's so long now. I don't even forget what the 2023 season events were called. But I won
the was it the mid-season?
What was a double? So what was it?
It was a mid-season and a Premier Challenge.
Yeah. So the mid-season I lost to Yotam. I didn't cut, and then the Premier Challenge he smoked me. But then I avoided him and cut, and I won the Premier Challenge. I was like, man, if I had to play that guy again, I would have gotten absolutely rolled.
Oh yeah, you're
It's
right.
like
I remember he.
losing to Calyrex Shadow Rider while you're playing Assault Vest Incineroar makes you
Yeah.
feel pretty bad. You're like, dude, how did I manage to do that? But unrelated. But yeah, I think that's what Yotam does in his free time is terrorizes me without realizing it.
I would like to note before we move on to we have a couple more teams to go over. I would like to note the Amoongus is Terra Electric. We saw the Terra Electric earlier on
Do you mean the
Riley's
Arch?
Pelipper. Oh, whoops, wrong team. I have up. I'm already looking at the other at the next team, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
So never mind. Whoops.
Well,
Yeah, we're
let's move on. I think we've talked this one to death. We can
yeah.
move on to the very cool sounding Terra Electric Amoongus.
So this is the Angelo talks about his friends, and this isn't just Angelo talking about his friends. This is the Angelo and Chris talks about their friends.
Yeah,
A lot of New Englanders did very well at this event. We had 7 day 2, and 2 top cut. We're only going to be going over one of these teams due to some time constraints. We're already well over an hour. But this is an important one. This is the team that our building group um, brought to Louisville.
Louisville.
That's the name of this. Thank you, go. So we had Keon, Jacob Littner, and of course Anthony Laundergan, Big Tony T, and the T stands for top cut.
There you
And
go.
this is like so Tony. For those of you who don't know, which is pretty much all of you, unless you know are one of my friends, or one of our friends listening to this. Uh, Anthony had a really, really rough Baltimore, and it feels like all the prep I put into this, it's all wasted. Like, what am I doing? And we needed our group mom, Jess, to pretty much, like what she always does, slaps us into shape and says, "You're fine. Go practice. Here's a good team. Get better." So
Yeah,
go like this is a team. This 6 here, like Keon, Jacob, and Tony, probably put about God, like at least like a month straight of just hardcore testing just this 6, just Incin, well, pretty much just Incin Ursaluna Amoongus P2, and just fit like swapping through these last 1 to 2 slots to try to
yeah,
find it. Like the Annihilate was the last Mon. I think it was added a week or two ago, and I think the final change was the Ursaluna going to Terra Flying, specifically so you don't auto lose to Misty Surge teams.
yeah. And the thing that I'll say to about this team, it's a testament to like play good mons and play good teams, and then put your spin on them.
Yeah.
Like Anthony's obviously a really good player, done a lot in the local scene. I think, from my understanding, that I haven't talked to him as much as you have. My understanding is pretty long time player, um,
Yes.
and all that kind
Very,
of
very
stuff.
long
So
time.
yeah,
He
so I mean,
took
a
a bit
lot
of
of
a
this
break.
is yeah, I think a lot of this is just him being an awesome player, right? But like I said, a lot of it is like they looked at that P2 team, the one with Flamigo that cut, and they're like, "This is awesome." And they played around with it, and then they all considered abandoning it, and then they figured out like the way that they can make it work for them. And for them, in typical Jacob fashion, I would say it was a bulk up annihilate, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
always.
but like I said, this is a good example of if you were like whether you're a newer player or someone who's played a lot, but like you want to take that next step, like play good mons, play good teams. You don't have to play the rental, but play good mons, play good teams, and put your spin on it. Whether it's whether it's a 6 mon, a Terra type, even just a different coverage move. Like this is how you play well. Like everyone wants to be like that team builder. I know, like I always wanted to be that team builder, but do you know when I got results? It was
When
when
you,
I was like, I'm going to play this Maridon team. And then
yeah.
we figured out, I would like to say, you've already bragged about this before, but very early on, we're like, this rock pond needs to be a fire pond. And
Yep.
then that team won the world championships. And it was like, that's how you do this stuff, man. You go, you find it, and you go from there.
Yeah, and even just some of the other things like the Incineroar being Assault Vest, which is something that I think our entire group just loves. Like AV Incin is our favorite mon. Putting having the goggles freed up so they can go on Annihilate, and having the gall to just run the no mouse, no proc Annihilate, and just say this is a good mon, regardless of
Yeah.
boosting the Rage Fist. Like this is a good Pokemon. Um, and then again, the Terra types are the big thing. Going Terra Flying and Ursaluna, which if we go to the overall data, um, in a moment. Once I find where the Ursaluna is, Ursaluna's top terra, like only there were only 3 Terraflying Ursaluna in the entire tournament. Our 3 little band of goofs were the
Yeah,
only people who were like, oh wait, there's an auto loss here. I'm running Terra Flying. I can now Terra out of this auto loss. Like, this
yeah,
is the level of creativity in that sense. Like, the Terra Electric on Amoonguss is really great because people try to go Terra Flying, Terra Blast into it, go into a Brave Bird into it. Terra Electric means that you're going to resist that and then be neutral to everything else. And you're in Amoonguss, you're bulky, you can regenerate, you can get
yeah,
that HP back. Being pretty much neutral to everything but ground, but also resisting the flying types going into you, that's really, really important. And that's a tech that is another like great decision that comes not only from just understanding I'm using good Pokemon, but getting the reps in, understanding, okay, we're losing to this. Here's Terra type fix. We're losing to
yeah.
this, like item change. Um, I think like if you look at our building group, and we do have a lot of different builders. Like, this isn't the exact team I would run. I know this isn't the exact team you would run, but I feel like there's aspects in this that are just conglomerations of like the different things that just or like notes that people in our group like. And the fact that we had 2 of our friends who brought the team day 2, and one of them have like, this is Anthony's first day 2, his first top cut, his best result ever. To have that result at a major is really inspiring. And shout out to all the cats who are
Yeah.
listening. We love you, we love you all, and we're so proud of you. The
And I
last,
think really quick before we move on,
yeah.
the cloak is awesome, right?
Oh,
Like
cloak
citrus
is
berry,
great. Cloak is
I know for those guys, for all of them, citrus berry is such like a comfort item. They're like it lets you live, we love it, but they knew they needed both clear smog and pollen puff on this team. On a balancing team like this, you need both, and they were willing to get uncomfortable and make that change. Like they were
yeah,
willing to say, "I know I love citrus berry," but like they were willing to make it, and you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
yep,
And I think that was as much as the terrifying Ursa was an example of that. I think the Covert Cloak is awesome.
yeah. This is the final team we're going to be going over. I'm not going to go over Carter's team because, so, little spoiler alert, Jay and I are going to be playing in a local doubleheader next week in Connecticut, and we probably will not be home in time to record. So Carter will be on his own, probably with Carl, to talk about not only just his team, but his entire run. But we did have another member of the Littleroot Lessons family go and, again, have his best result. Nathan Moon, also known as Kamikaze Kid in the Discord, this is another case of he's been playing T-Tar, Excadrill, Sinistra, Volk for like the entire metagame pretty much. And I will go and eat my words. I am on the record saying Excadrill is a
We both
bad
are.
mon. Yeah.
I was going to say we both are.
Yeah.
I feel even worse because I was in House Cup, which is the tournament that Bauer Dad, the creator of the pars, because I just dropped the
Passers.
S because I don't know what to call it.
Passers.
Like he did it, and Kamikaze was on my team, and they were like, "I'm gonna play Extra Sand," and I was like, "Dude, this team is not good." I was like, "I don't think this team is good." I like in trying to be like as kind as possible, and I know he's a good player, right? But I just like sometimes like I want people to try to break me out when I'm tunnel visioning, like of things, and I was like, "Dude, I don't know if this is any good."
Well,
Like,
like he would
I
go
mean,
and post the team, and I'm like, I can't help you because you. And he's like, Angelo, I already know the first thing you're going to say is drop the extra drill. I'm not doing it. I'm like, fine,
yeah,
just be Stellar Terra then, please.
it's so funny. But no, I
But
think
yeah,
we both have to eat. We both have to eat crow on this one. Where
oh, absolutely. And the thing is, I love to see it. I love seeing our community members do well. And like,
yeah,
this is Extra Drill's strongest soldier. This is the only Extra Drill to day 2. And with an 8-3 finish, finishing in 39th place, like, I mean, it is a shame
awesome.
he lost.
It's
Like,
so
his
cool.
one loss was, it was the first round of day 2. So he was already just his day two loss already took him out at the start, but he stuck in it and went and got another 2 games in, and like yeah, finished top 64, which is an amazing accomplishment. That's 100 points. That's a booster box. Like that's you sell that booster box like you're and depending I don't know what his travel was, but yeah, you sell the booster box, you get most of your money back for this trip, or you get to rip packs, which is super fun.
Yeah,
The team,
I mean, the Talon's wild too, man. You never
yeah,
see Talon without Earthquake next to it. And it's on a team with the sand. Oh no, it has goggles, so the sand's not going
mhm.
to chip it. But like, no taunt, protect Talonflame. I mean, I guess you don't care that much about Trick Room because you have 3 mons that are pretty good in it with Sinistra, T-Tar, and Gastro. But like, I'll be honest, if you showed me this team, I'd like before, I'd be like, this looks like some 4 or 5 stuff. And I mean that in the nicest way possible because clearly I'm wrong about it. And it like had good matchups. It was piloted well. So it's awesome to see. I love to be wrong about things.
Yeah,
And it happens a lot. So it's really cool to, like I said, be wrong about this team.
yeah. I think one of the big things that, if I have to say that we were wrong about something with the extra drill, is the fact that like one thing that we talked about a lot was how good ground damage is, and the
Yeah.
fact that extra drill provides a super fast ground damage. That especially once you do click that stellar terra, like your high horsepower, I don't think anything in the format can live it.
And high
Is
high horsepower is so much more is so much stronger than Tantrum. I
yeah,
mean, obviously Tantrum's 100% accurate, but I think like a lot of times things run Tantrum because they don't get high horsepower,
yeah.
and it's
Like
like to get that, even if you're an extra, what is it, 135 attack, I think. So
yep.
it's like super high. Like we said, Incin's not as prevalent as I think we thought it was going to be. Um, and Sash, it's like Sneasler. I'm going to get a hit off no matter what. And with Sand, if Sand is up, I'm probably going to get 2 off. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and sometimes you only need the, and like that's the thing where I was probably missing with the mon. Sometimes you only need the two, and it's just the metagame really broke out super well for it. And also the other modes, Sinistra being able to set up, let the Volcarona set up, or even just bring your T-Tar out to set the sand up, then just swapping the Sinistra back in, and just having that as like a redirection bot to let the extra drill get those extra hits in once the sash is procced, is super useful as well, along with like being that, you know, support mon where, okay, I don't want to go up against sashes. I have the sand breaking those sashes. I have a redirector with Rocky Helmet breaking those sashes. And the redirection also helps the Volcarona setup as well. And Volk is just another super powerful stat bot that offensively really goes well with the Tyranitar. And you can get a couple quiver dances off, and the sand that your opponent was planning to fight against, that's not the problem. The +2/+2/2 Volk is the problem, who can heal itself with Giga Drain, put out a ton of spread damage with Heat Wave, burn your physical attackers, and it even has a Citrus Berry for its own longevity. Uh, the last spot, the Gastrodon on this team, Nathan did say that they didn't really use it a lot in the. It was initially a Primarina, and then he said he didn't like how the Prim played, and he said he felt like even though Prim was on paper the best Mon for the team, there was probably another better Mon. I believe Gastrodon, especially with the Gastrodon, really helped with the Dozo matchup. That's initially what the Prim was for. Being both Storm Drain and Clear Smog was super useful. And if they're going and switching to a Steel type Terra, well, that's like you want it to be a Steel type.
It's got to
Um,
be the rain check too, right?
yeah,
I mean,
and
I
I
think
was saying
that's what
it's
it
the rain
provides
check
you
too.
that Prim doesn't. It's like even like Volk against Rain, if you have Gastro next to it, like we talked all these things about Basket Legion and multipliers. The only thing better than multipliers is an immunity, right?
Yeah,
So it's like, man, I'm just if this Gastrodon stays on the field, you are never, ever touching my Volcarona. Like, congrats. And I
yeah.
win, you know? So I think it's obviously Dozo makes sense. So it's not Terra Steel. You beat it right then and there. Um, and then secondly, I mean, it's a rain patch, right? It's not an auto win, but it's a nice patch for a team that if your T target's out of position, if you brought that Gastro on the back, you're maybe not totally out of it.
Yeah. And again, congratulations to, like just going through his matches. Like he only played one rain team, and he did win against it. That was his round 7 of Swiss. Because he mentioned, he's like, yeah, it's good, but he's like, it's good. I never got a chance to really use it in those specific matchups. But that's kind of what your 6 Pokemon is on these teams at this point. It's just like you're just setting it for those matchups if you have that set core. And also just going through even like his day one, like start with James Evans, beat him. Joey Woodring, who was on stream, that was a Rain team he lost against, so he actually went 1-1 versus Rain. Giovanni Aranabar, who ran he was also, I believe he top cut with Palafin on a
Yeah, I was gonna say I recognize that name.
yeah. So like his day one was was a gauntlet as well, and being able to go with a team that a lot of people didn't really have a lot of respect for, and then going and saying, nope, I'm just going to player diff. I know my team better than you guys do, so I can win with my knowledge. Like, it's inspiring shit. And again, Nathan, congratulations. You have us saying good things about Excadrill. You'll be on the litter record whenever whenever I have time to do interviews again. So with that being said, I think we are all set for team coverage. Again, we went a little more in depth with overall teams. We didn't have like a Carter's corner, but you might have that next week at Lil. When Carter
It might be
gets
the
to,
whole episode next week.
it
Carter might not
actually
even
might.
talk about the team that wins. He might just go
He might
down
just.
the
He might
go
just
down and be
find.
like, "What finished 147th?"
It's like, why is there a Pikachu higher than this? Like, I don't know. Oh, is it the Pikachu that plays higher than the Articuno? This is usually when I would say, Jay, take me out, but I can't do that. I got to do that. Oh crap! Screw me. Chris, where can the people find you?
You won't want to follow me on Twitter because I do not tweet about Pokemon. I tweet my psychotic failings as a Philadelphia sports fan. Um,
Yay!
so you'll find me in the Littleroot Discord. I know there's a lot of overlap with Bauer Dad's Discord as well. So find me in there. Feel free to DM me. But like I said, you do not want to follow me on Twitter because you will not find any relevant Pokemon information in there.
That's why I have 2 accounts. Because one of them, don't give me that look, because you
What
follow
if I think
both.
neither of them are good?
One of actually my Pokemon account does have more followers. The other one is just my psychosis, and just like I just want to.
I spend too much time on Twitter with one account, man. If I had to, it's done.
I gotta
Like
I gotta
my my. Oh, I was going to say my advice for all of you is to get off Twitter, except for to
yeah,
follow the
no,
wonderful people at Little Lessons. But other than that, stay off.
yeah,
Be
no,
better for you.
seriously, get off the internet. It's so bad for you. But if you are on the internet, you can follow us at LR Lessons, which is where we tweet out our episodes. When we're at events, which we were tweeting at, we were letting everyone know, like Carter was at the event this weekend on the Twitter. Also, where we tweet out any of our other content. Again, at some point, I will have the free time to start interviewing people for my interview series, the record. Carter got a microphone and was able to actually do some like man on the ground interviews at Louisville as well. That's going to be up there as well, along with the third part of his Genlock series. You can also listen to all of us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. That's what it's called. I was about to say Apple Music because I'm kind of like work brained. Apple Podcasts, and any other podcatcher that you use. And as always, the Discord's popping. Everyone was just celebrating Carter's solid run, Force Kamikaze kids, like day 2 run as well. The vibes are immaculate at Litter Lessons because our people showed up and showed out at this regional, and hopefully at the next event we're all at, we will be doing well as well. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great night.